Plopsaland, Belgium has been on my list for a while, and that was shortly after we all realised that it's quicker to get to Plopsaland than it is to get to Alton Towers. But it wasn't actually until I spotted a really good cheap deal on Le Shuttle, what I used to call Eurotunnel, and it was when I spotted this really good deal actually that we decided to go for it. So I'm going to split this into parts, and part one I'm going to call the journey. So prior to going on the shuttle, we had recently heard a lot of horror stories from people who've been stuck in lines at border control quite recently. So we arrived at the terminal at Folkestone, and we arrived 2 hours early to discover nobody there, hardly anyone there at all. When you drive through and there's like drive-through check-in gates, they automatically read your number plate, and then they print out this chit that you're supposed to hang off your rear view mirror, which I promptly then tore by mistake because it's got these perforations in it and you're supposed to tear it, and I just ripped it. Didn't seem to matter. And after this, well, we just basically hung around the terminal for 2 hours until it was time to go through the border control gates and actually board the train. So all this promised chaos did not materialise, at least not for us. But getting on the train in a car felt really weird. You're just driving very slowly through the inside of this train. So you can... We're going in the top deck. Too fast, I think. We are the first. Oh no, we're not quite the first.
Kino beat us to it.
Kino. So we are getting into our shuttle. You can get out of your car and go to the loo, but on the whole, you shouldn't really need to. The trip through the tunnel takes just over half an hour. Before you board the train, an announcement does suggest that you go for a wee before you get on the train. Fair enough. And then we drove out of the train and drove off along these beautifully kept French and Belgian roads to Plopsaland. So this was around a 40-minute trip from Calais and was ridiculously straightforward, even for someone not really used to driving in Europe, since we usually get the train. We don't usually bother driving. None of us really like driving long distances. And this was really straightforward, much more straightforward than we were expecting. Now, you can see the Burgundy track for Ride to Happiness from quite some distance away. So perhaps the residents of Japan aren't quite as bothered by the sight of coaster track as those neighbours of Alton Towers. The ride is not particularly high, it's about 33 metres, but this is a very flat part of the world, famously so, and there's no hiding this ride behind trees or in a valley. And before I get into talking about the park, I would like to note that there is a fairly big supermarket about 5 minutes up the road, like 5 minutes walk up the road from the park entrance. So if you want to stock up on snacks, pop out of the park and get some food at lunchtime, it's there, it's quite good. And the reason I mentioned it is I hadn't seen any other people mention it, so I'm going to mention it. We arrived and we checked into the Plopsaland Hotel at about 2 p.m, which is not very bad going for an extremely laid back trip from London. And then we went into the park. So the next part is the land. The land. So Plopsaland is a family park which contains various characters which are famous in Belgium, but maybe not quite so popular elsewhere. So we recognised Uki in our room, and Maya the Bee, but others like Plop and Bomba were less familiar to us. I feel like I've seen Bomba before, but not sure where. Now the park itself is quite small, fairly small, and extremely clean. The kids areas were like thronged with families, but the areas aimed at older kids and adults were pretty quiet. Now we didn't see a queue over half an hour, basically for the whole 2 days we were there. And it reminds me the most of Portland's Park, in the sense that the Peppa Pig area is absolutely rammed, but the other areas aren't. It's almost like when you design a park with enough attractions for everybody, your guests don't spend the whole day in hour-long queues for everything, as we all know and love in the UK. So toilets. Now, I know you want to hear about the toilets. They were fine. They were fine actually. There were a lot of them. Some of them were themed, like Ride to Happiness toilets were themed. They were clean. They were fine. The Eurotunnel toilets were not so great. Now, about the food, we had our dinner, breakfast and lunch at the hotel buffet, which I'll go more into in a bit. So we only really had a couple of snacks at the park itself. We had waffles because it's Belgium, and chips because it's Belgium. I didn't find the prices too steep, but maybe I've just got used to paying £6 for a Coke at Coke Zero at the Merlin parks. A less impressive feature was the Express Pass. Now, not the system itself, which did work fine, but it was tracking down where the separate Express Pass entrances were. They weren't always clearly signposted for some of the rides, particularly Draconis. And for others, you had to struggle your way up the exit stairs, so you're moving against all the other people who were coming down, who all wanted to tell you that you were going the wrong way in at least 3 different languages, that was quite annoying. So the hotel. Now, the hotel is themed after a theatre, basically. It's like walking into a theatre. There are even these boxes on the upper floors, so you can look down at the stage, which is in the centre of the lobby. Now, we actually saw Plop read a bedtime story. This was in Dutch from here in the evenings, and it's clear that the kids really, really love Plop. Like, he's clearly a popular, beloved character. The buffet at the hotel was pretty good. There are lots of choices at all the meals, so we had breakfast, lunch, and dinner there. And overall, it was good quality stuff. I mean, obviously, not everything can be a banger. There was some like weird slop. The breakfast selection also had quite a few like packaged things. There's like honey cake that you can then take to snack on in the park. No signs up like in Europa Park of do not take all this food to eat in the park. That they trust you. But the only quibble here was lunch. So when we booked, there was a special half-price lunch offer when you booked the hotel, which we obviously took. But at the lunch, we caused some embarrassed consternation among the staff by showing this slip of paper signed by the hotel reception team, which they didn't recognise. So we had to go with the waitress in tow to the reception desk, where we then had to establish that we weren't about to run off without paying. We'd already paid. And the waitress said that they just don't get informed of offers like these, and she'd never seen it before. But however, everyone was nice about it, they're polite about it, and it was dealt with quickly in the end. The next part is going to be the merch. So I bought some t-shirts and some pins. I'm gonna cut for a second.
Is editing me. I wanted to add that if you spend over a certain amount in the shop, which as you'll see I definitely did, you get a free fast pass for Ride to Happiness. Now it gets printed on your receipt, which is cool, and because we already had the express pass anyway, I had this receipt in my pocket, so I actually ran after someone in the park who's wearing a Cedar Point sweatshirt. And I just approached him and said, "Oh, hey, are you going to Ride to Happiness?" And he said yes. And I gave him the receipt with the fast pass on. Come to think of it, I really hope that there wasn't any personal information on that receipt. But anyway, so I thought it was nice to just sort of share the love a bit, so he could skip the tiny queue.
One of the shirts I bought. It's pretty expensive, the merch. The Ride to Happiness stuff in particular is very pricey. I assume it's because the Tomorrowland brand is like ultra premium or something. But so this shirt was £25. I got a J3 top for my niece. J3 is the Flemish Spice Girls apparently. And another shirt like this for my nephew. So it was quite expensive actually. I mean, it could be that paying £6 for a Shongolulu shirt at Gold Reef City has just spoiled me. Still, I mean, it looks to be pretty good quality, so that's something. Oh, hasn't got Ride to Happiness on it. Oh well. Okay, on to the main event, the rides, but not that one yet. You'll have to hang on to the end so I can tell you about Ride to Happiness. So because this is very firmly a family park, we didn't go on the rides that were very clearly for children unless they look really good, in which case, yeah, we went on them. So first of all, we went on this ride called Vic's Whirlwind, which is a new ride for the park, and it's the same model that's opening quite soon at Paulton's Park. It's like a family version of Toxicator, so it doesn't completely go upside down, but it kind of swings you back and forth and does this kind of thing, and the gondola like flips around. So it's really good fun. Now, the Viking Land also has a disco coaster, one of those things where there's a saucer thing and it sort of goes like this. So lots of spinning things at this park. It's called the Big Wave, which is themed to a Viking longboat at sea, which I like. I mean, I feel like that's quite a good theme for a ride that basically does this. But I don't really like the restraints. I always feel like I'm like in a burger press. But following this, we then went on Heidi the Ride, which is a wooden coaster themed obviously to Heidi. This was a lot faster and a lot wilder than I was expecting, especially the first drop in the back row. I would not recommend Heidi the Ride for someone who is a coaster coward. The first drop in particular is quite intense. Also, much to my daughter's annoyance, she hates water rides. We went on this log flume, which is really good fun. It's all dinosaur themed, coloured troughs, all these sound effects, massive dinosaurs. And for me, I'm used to bare bones water rides in the UK with barely any theming at all. This one was great. It doesn't quite fit in with the rest of the area. It's got Draconis, this powered coaster on one side, and Swiss Heidi on the other. So it didn't really make sense in that area, but it doesn't matter. We'll take any themed log flume at the moment. So Draconis is a powered coaster with a dragon theme, obviously, and some like projection mapping in the queue, stuff like that, which really adds to the experience. Now, it's a long ride and it's fun, but that one does actually get quite a long queue. The ride ups were pretty slow. And we also went on this thing called the Nachtwacht Flyer, which is a star flyer that's just themed to this kind of Buffy style show, which is like has an elf, a werewolf, and a vampire, which I don't know, they fight crime or something. It's a star flyer, which I always like, although I did wish I'd worn an extra layer about halfway through the cycle because I was getting quite cold. It was quite windy up there. So there's another coaster which is themed to what I saw described as the Flemish Spice Girls, a group called J3. Now that one was not running when we were there, but we did get on this hashtag Like Me coaster, which is an elderly kiddie ride. It's just, I think, a bit like the Bluey ride. It's okay, but the really impressive part of that was actually the queue, which is themed to like a high school with lockers and graffiti and posters and stuff like that, so it was really cool. We went on to Anubis, which is a Gerstlauer launched coaster, which is themed around this kind of haunted house boarding school show called Anubis. This launch has some heft to it, so you really get a good kick, and the ride is quite thrilling. It can be rough, but I always ride these things with my shoulders against the front of the restraints, which is where my ears don't get bashed. Now, some people say that's defensive riding. I just call it sensible. Now, up until Ride to Happiness was built, this was the most thrilling ride in the park, and it is pretty intense. I thought it was really fun. You do have to take your glasses off for upside down rides at Plopsaland. They don't care if you've got a strap, just to note. So as for the dark rides and other experiences, we went on Bumber World Tour, which is this dark ride based on the character of Bumber, this sort of amorphous clown in this long fleece tunic, and his friends. Now, I did find something really appealing about Bumber. I can't quite put my finger on why, but he found it so charming and reassuring, and I really regret not buying a Bumber plushie now. And we actually went on it twice. My husband went, we have to go on that again. It's just so cute. Now, Plop's Woods is an indoor boat ride around. You go around the land of Plop, who I assume is some kind of gnome. Now, this is a whimsical, engaging, and long ride with lots to see. One of the strengths of these characters is that even for people not familiar with them, you can immediately work out what they're supposed to be and what their world is like. So this ride introduced Plop and his world to us, for which I am grateful. They also all have bells on their hats, and that's cute too. Plopsaland also has a small farm, and it has chickens, ponies, pigs, ducks, donkeys, and very importantly, a whole paddock of goats, and you can walk into the paddock and you can meet the goats, which I'm fully supportive of any opportunity to meet goats, especially baby goats. Fortunately, I did have a few euro coins on me, so we could use these food dispensers and get goat food, meaning we were briefly extremely popular among the goats of Plopsaland until we ran out of food, by which point they didn't care about us anymore. Anyway, on to Ride to Happiness. Yay! Now, I kept looking at Ride to Happiness, which is visible throughout most of the park, and complaining that I wish to experience happiness. And after some faffing in the queue for Draconis, which we eventually bailed, we couldn't find the express pass queue. We decided we should at last attempt to attain happiness. So, in 2023, I was too chicken to go on Mandrill Mayhem at Chessington. Embarrassing. In 2024, I chickened out of Expedition Everest at Animal Kingdom in Disney World, but in 2025, I got better. So I've now ridden some of the most intense rides in the world, the Smiler, Voltron, Hyperia. Now, 2024 me would absolutely not have ridden this thing. Now, I knew it existed, but there's no way I would have attempted it. It turns you upside down 5 times. It launches you into the air twice and has a near vertical drop. It's like I wouldn't have even remotely considered the possibility of riding this thing. But I did decide to make 2025 my year of saturation therapy. Well, 24, 25. So how was this? How was the Ride to Happiness? Well, what I appreciated is that they don't present this coaster as something scary. It's not Intimidator 3000. It's not Aneurysm Grey Out 600. You know, it's made clear from the queue and the loading station that this is supposed to be a joyful experience. I mean, it's literally called the Ride to Happiness. It's not called the Ride to Blacking Out. So having like a smooth track and comfortable seats also makes a big difference to how scary a ride can be. So I know some people are worried by lap bars and would prefer these over the shoulder restraints, and I've seen comments like this about Icon at Pleasure Beach. What's also important is that this ride, in a family park as it is, never gets a huge queue. It's always manageable, maybe 10-20 minutes, and I think this also helps for people who are worried, and I've said this before, because you aren't standing and waiting for ages and getting yourself into a state. But any apprehension I had, which to be honest, I didn't really have much, I was really looking forward to it. I was blown away at the launch, and I'm not a huge launch fan. I like to be given enough speed to get underway, but I'm not interested in having my soul leave my body at the start of the ride. Now this one gives you a firm, gentle shove rather than a kick up the bum. So my daughter described it as more like your mother pushing you on a swing rather than her granddad pushing her on a swing, which basically launches you across the park. They've got a theme that plays on the train as well, which is synced to the ride, which is a clever touch, and it's just ridiculous spinning bliss. Now, I can only speak for myself, of course, but I never found it too much. There are so many different forces at work on you throughout the ride, but it doesn't leave you feeling sick or shaken up. Now, the most significant experience, which I'd had on Enzo on Icon recently, which are the spinning seats on Icon, was at times it's difficult to know which way is up because the combination of inversions and spin is completely disorienting. So basically, there are points at the ride you have no idea which way up you are, which I know sounds ridiculous because you always know which way is up. And in this thing, no, even with my eyes open, looking around, trying to work out where the sky is, trying to orient myself as, am I upside down? And then of course you flip, you're not anymore, and you just don't know where you are in space. And there's nowhere else where you get that experience. And the whole time with your brain going, I'm completely safe, I'm having a great time. Also, I have no clue where I am in these 3 dimensions. Not a clue. That is just not an experience that most human beings will ever get to have. So that was really fun. A side question related to that, which I did wonder, is can the Enzo seats on Icon give you an idea of what Ride to Happiness is like? And the answer is yes. That feeling of I don't know which way is up, also get that on Enzo. So it is pretty close. Now, I'm going to get a bit pretentious now. This next part is going to sound a bit pretentious, but stay with me. So, in literary criticism, the word text is like a technical term. It means a set of signs that is available to be reconstructed by a reader or observer if sufficient interpretants are available. What that means is that anything that can be read can be defined as a text that conveys some sort of meaning. So that can be a game, a book, obviously, an advert, a slogan on someone's shirt. So it doesn't even have to be an actual literal text in the sense that a wordless dance performance with a narrative is a text. So by this definition, a ride that tells some sort of story and has a narrative to it is a text. So one of the big examples is something like The Smiler or Nemesis. They are, or Expedition Everest, they are texts. They tell you a story. So in this sense, you can interpret Ride to Happiness as a text. You are promised, as you board the train, a life-changing experience. And the initial slow roll out of the station where you're very slowly turned upside down and presented to the riders, to the viewers in the park as a spectacle and encourages into action. But this ride is also offering you like a proposal. By moving slowly, it's showing you as a rider that you are experiencing an inversion while you're spinning. Here you are, you're upside down now. And you and everyone else knows which way up you are. But as you're taken up this first hill by the launch, it begins to become clear that the ride has misled you, possibly on purpose. Now, my husband actually wrote a whole essay on this, but I'm going to give you a quote from what he has written. So, and before you say this was written with AI, I promise you, this is how he writes, and this is what it's like to live with him. Before I start reading. So, I quote, "You are clearly experiencing forces, obvious and directional, but you cannot consistently distinguish whether what you feel should be attributed to gravity or the ride's imposed acceleration. You are oriented in space, but down no longer functions as a stable reference. You are moving through a sequence, but that sequence resists narration in the terms the ride itself initially provided. The framework holds and fails at the same time. What's striking is this is not merely an abstract analogy. It aligns closely with a foundational idea in modern physics, Einstein's equivalence principle. So this principle states that, locally, the effects of gravity are indistinguishable from those of acceleration. It's the starting point of general relativity. If you are in a closed system, there is no experiment you can perform that will tell you whether you are in a gravitational field or being accelerated. It's not that the roller coaster is about philosophy or relativity, of course not. It's that it stages in a very direct way the same kind of instability, the sense that what felt like a fixed, obvious framework is in fact contingent, and that once it shifts, the world becomes harder to pass in the terms you had taken for granted. That may go some way to explaining why people come off Ride to Happiness talking about it in terms you don't usually hear about roller coasters. Most rides, however intense, operate within a broadly stable frame. Even something like The Smiler, which is very much a text in its own right, as I already said, that's my idea, though deliberately overwhelming and disorienting, still gives you a fixed orientation and repeatable track-led narrative. The confusion there is a matter of density and speed, and here it is structural. So, those are his thoughts on the ride. My thoughts on the ride are, well, kind of similar. Of course, we got off, we turned around, we got back straight back on it again. A side note is I noticed that 6-7 has reached Belgium. So there's a lot of this on the ride photos. So finally, I think most top rated coasters have their detractors, and that's fine. Not everything is for everyone. But this is the first coaster I've ridden where just about everyone is in agreement. This is an excellent experience, and I would recommend it to anyone. So while something like Saw the Ride remains unridden for me, I still don't have that crowd. I'm not really interested in riding it because I find the theming off-putting. Like, I don't like horror movies. I definitely don't like Saw. Now, everyone says it's rough, but for Ride to Happiness, I would wholeheartedly recommend that you give this a try if you get the opportunity, and it may even lead you to some literary criticism. So that's my thoughts on Plopsaland, Ride to Happiness, and also my thoughts on, my husband's thoughts on interpreting rides as text. So anytime you want to try doing that, it's good fun. You should definitely do that. And that's all for me. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it's not that long. I hope it's not too long. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do like, please do comment, please do subscribe. I'd like to welcome my new subscribers because I've got like more now, so that's very cool. And I hope that people that join for one thing also appreciate some of the other stuff as well. You know, I have split things into playlists, so if you're just interested in the knitting machine stuff, it's all in one place, and if you're more interested in just random wafflings, that's in another place. But yeah, I mean, I do hope that if you like listening to me waffle, you might also like me doing other things. Who knows? Please like me, please like me. I'd also like to say a big hi to Evie and Jessica. I know I haven't done a long video for a little bit, so this one is just for you guys. Okay, and I'll see you in the next one. Good night.